A member of one of Britain's most notorious families has died in prison after catching COVID. John Pitt, whose family were known as Britain's worst neighbours from hell after hitting the headlines in the 1990s, died as he served a jail sentence at Humber in East Yorkshire. An official report said Mr. Pitt died aged 53 after falling victim to a huge COVID outbreak at the prison near South Cave on the outskirts of Hull. Mr. Pitt died of COVID-19 on March 22, 2021, aged 53. Hull Live reports that Mr. Pitt, who was a serial criminal with a history of violence, had served almost 8 years more than his original sentence after he was jailed for attacking a former partner. A judge had described him as an obvious and gross continuing danger to the public. Mr. Pitt's partner had been tied up naked and threw herself 20 feet from a window to escape him when he attacked her out of the blue at their home in Northumberland, trying to gouge her eyes out and threatening to cut her throat with scissors. Mary and John Pitt in their home with their pet Rottweilers, the Pitt family appeared on a Channel 4 cutting-edge documentary about nasty neighbors. Image: NCJ Media Limited. In July 2009, Mr. Pitt was given a minimum 4.5-year imprisonment for public protection (IPP) sentence for false imprisonment. He was moved to Humber in 2019. An independent investigation by the Prisons and Probation's Ombudsman has found that Mr. Pitt caught the disease in the prison during a significant outbreak in February and March 2021. The Ombudsman said she was concerned that when Mr. Pitt tested positive for COVID-19, healthcare staff did not take his clinical observations and he was not monitored to see if he became symptomatic. Mr. Pitt was obese, which meant that he was at a higher risk of developing complications, and should have been closely monitored and his observations taken regularly, the report says. Mr. Pitt complained about being unwell on March 2 but was told by a nurse to sit down to improve his breathing. The nurse then said they would return to check on him later. But the report said Mr. Pitt's condition and risk should have prompted an urgent clinical response. The nurse did not return for over an hour, by which time Mr. Pitt had got into bed because he felt so unwell, and then an ambulance was called. John Pitt died in prison in East Yorkshire. File photo, image, Hull Daily Mail, Men Media. Most read. Pasha Lee dead. Hobbit star who quit stardom to defend Ukraine is killed in battle. Princess Diana's wedding dress designer was horrified when she saw gown on big day. Pub owner says 2 families left venue like bomb site without paying £330 bill. At hospital, Mr. Pitt's health deteriorated, and he was admitted to intensive care unit where he was put on a ventilator. He died almost 3 weeks later. The report said there were also concerns Mr. Pitt's diabetes was not monitored regularly and there were no follow-up checks or reviews documented in his clinical record. Mr. Pitt had a violent life along with an extensive criminal record, including numerous counts of assault, criminal damage, and drug dealing. The report said he was the 6th prisoner at Humber to die since March 2019, with 1 more having died since. Of the other deaths, 1 was drug-related, 2 were self-inflicted and 3 were from COVID-19. Jailing him in 2009, Mr. Justice Openshaw described Mr. Pitt's criminal record as appalling, Chronicle Live reported. He added, "In my judgment he presents an obvious and gross continuing danger to the public and that danger it seems to me will continue for the foreseeable. The terrible suffering sustained by the victim must in my judgment be reflected by the imposition of a substantial sentence." Read more. Armed gang who left woman so terrified she wet herself chased off by brave Gran. Read more. Man killed partner on bus they lived on before dumping body doused in acid on roadside.